Hello and welcome to the I Love Me Lab show. My name is Gail Buck, and I'm an NLP Master Life Coach, meditation instructor, and a seeker of happiness. And each week, we're going to bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover additional ways of self-care, self-love, and becoming a healthier, happier you. So thanks for spending time with us today, and let's let the show begin. Hello, and welcome back to the I Love Me Lab podcast. And I'm super excited to be here today with Lucas Seipp-Williams. I had to go over pronouncing your name. It's a little bit tricky, but thank you. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, and you are a human design analyst and a coach. Yep. And recently, we're going to get into it a little bit, but recently Lucas went through my human design with me. And that's why we decided to do this show together, because I thought it was so interesting. And that some of the listeners would like to maybe learn something new if they're not familiar with it, or dig in deeper if they are. So, and I read a little bit in your bio, and it says that you use a human design system to support individuals to deepen their self-love and trust in their life. And you also use it for relationships and for businesses as well, right? For business partnerships.
Yep. There's application across all those areas.
Okay, so let's start with what exactly is human design?
So human design is a synthesis. It's a typology system. So for anyone out there who's been interested in Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or you name it, Gail, have there been any that have been important in your life? Any of these systems?
Oh, I've used the Myers-Briggs. I've also I have a friend from a long time ago that reads my astrology, my astrological chart, and he'll actually connect with me, every couple of years and say, Gail, what's going on? Because of something that he sees there. So yes, all those things.
Yeah. So it's a way to understand how I'm unique, how you're unique, each human being, even though we have clearly commonalities. I found I really was not all that interested in things like human design when it came into my life, but it just happened to be so accurate and so helpful at the time that it grabbed me, and I started to obsessively study it. But it's a system that's a synthesis of astrology, of the archetypes from the I Ching, of the chakras, so energy centers, and biology, physics, and it provides a visual. So when you had your human design with me, we were on Zoom and you could see your genetic imprinting in a visual depiction in a body graph that we call a body graph. There's 9 energy centers and there's pathways between these centers. And depending on when you're born, it shows us where you have activations, where you're going to be consistent in life, and then where you have openness, and that's where we're going to be inconsistent, where we're going to be open to conditioning from outside forces. So it's like a map of how you're unique, and it's incredibly detailed.
So it's all tied into the time, place, and location of our birth.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So does that mean that anybody else who was born at exactly the same time, exactly the same place and day as I was is going to be the same?
Well, not this. We're going to share. You're going to have a similar human design, and it has to be. So when we see your human design, most programs that provide a human design, they're showing you. Well, the point I want to make is that the birth time is really important, because really any number of seconds later, and the human design could change pretty drastically. Usually it doesn't. Usually it takes a number of hours. But even twins who are born minutes apart, there's actually some parts of their human design that are different, that don't necessarily show up on most human design programs. That said, human design doesn't tell us everything about a human being. And obviously there are, there could be a professional basketball player who's a 7 foot center who has the same human design as me, born on the same day in the same moment in the same location, and clearly have different genetic material than I do, but we will share very similar characteristics as far as our personality, our life purpose, how we're designed to operate in the world, how we're designed to make decisions. So it doesn't tell us everything, but it tells us more than really has ever been revealed before prior to this system.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was so interesting, when we did, well, do you call it a reading or what do you call it? Or analysis of my chart?
Yeah,
Better, right?
I use both terms.
Okay, so when we did the analysis of my chart, I found that really interesting because there were a lot of things that were completely resonated with me, like, operating from my gut instinct, which has
Mhm.
always been very strong for me. And I seem to mess up or get frustrated when I'm thinking things through, things like that, right? Is what you're
Mhm.
kind of digging into.
Absolutely. So one of the most profound things that human design reveals is how we're each designed to make decisions. This is one of the places of being a human being where we can suffer the most, where we can experience the greatest stress and anxiety. We have key decisions to make in our lives, and really the one of the kind of revolutionary things from human design is it suggests that human beings are designed to make decisions from an inner authority, not from our minds. I don't know about you, Gail, but I was raised to believe that I should be smart about the decisions I make, to think them through, to weigh the pros and cons, and make the best decision mentally. Were you
Yes.
raised that way as well?
Oh, of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
and certainly most of us also get some advice along the way to trust your gut or your intuition, things like that, but it's so de-emphasized or relative to the the belief that the mind should control our lives. And human design suggests that the opposite is true, that the mind should really take a back seat, and that each of us has an inner authority. I use the example of a migrating animal or an insect. How does a hummingbird know how to travel from Mexico, or a butterfly, I guess? I'm not sure if
The
hummingbirds,
monarchs, the monarchs.
monarchs,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Monarchs from Mexico to Canada, and it doesn't have a
Yeah.
human brain. It doesn't have Google Maps. So how does it get there? Well, every body is plugged into the larger pattern of life. And so, as humans, we have these amazing brains, but they really can create so much suffering for us, and they actually can pull us off what is the natural and correct track in our life. So, that's just one of the things that human design reveals that's so profound and so important, and that I've found, well, personally, gave me so much relief. And then the people I've been sharing this with, and people who've learned human design from other places, find that this is like one of the most beneficial things, where we can take the pressure off and know how to make decisions as ourselves. And the one other thing I'll say about this, Gail, is that, and I'd love to hear from your experience, being you're a gut knowing person. You're a
Yeah.
pure sacral generator, so you're designed to live in response to life, and for your gut to tell you yes or no. And sometimes the decisions that our inner authority tells us are correct for us, or don't make any sense to our minds, and other people
Right.
don't understand it, and even
Or
our
maybe
own
it's not the way that we're conditioned that it should be, because
mind.
we live our life with I should do this or I shouldn't do that.
It can occur as risky. It can occur like it doesn't make logical sense. That of all the
Mhm.
evidence the mind has about what is the right decision versus the wrong decision, or the safer decision versus the riskier decision, um, oftentimes it doesn't add up. But we just know inside of us that this is correct for me, or this is not correct for me. So
Now,
yeah.
and Lucas, you talked about, like, you help people in your coaching, if I understood correctly, using the human design to help them, like, love and trust themselves more. And so
Mhm.
how do you use this system to do that?
Yeah. So what in if we could show people a visual, I mentioned it earlier, but just imagine that of there's a map of a territory, and on that map So all the possible places you could go on the map, that's all the possible ways of being of a human being. But each one of us are only going to have parts of that map colored in.
Mhm.
So that's who you are. That's what's consistent for you. And then there's going to be other parts of the map that are open, that are not colored in. And what happens to human beings is that so we experience the totality of everything that's in that map, all the possible ways of operating and being. So we all experience emotion, we all experience fear, we all have energy to act, we all communicate, we all think, right? But depending on your human design, there's going to be ways of being that are consistent for you, and then there's going to be ways of being that are inconsistent. What happens to us is that most people, their mind has been conditioned to believe they should be the ways that they're not designed to be.
Right.
And so the first thing that happens, and the visual of this is so stark because you can just see it, where the color is who you are, and where there is a lack of color, who you're not. And almost every time when I do an analysis for someone, they really get it so clearly, even if they don't understand all the lingo from human design, but they get it so clearly. Oh, wow. Okay. This is who I am. This is who I'm not. This is where I'm consistent. This is where I'm always going to be inconsistent. So when I came to human design, it totally blew away. And I was in my mid 30s. So I had created a whole life from conditioning. I was the most competitive, hardest working person. When I went to a job interview, when they would interview me, I would say, look, when you hire me, you're getting the most competitive, hardest working person. And I could operate that way, but I wasn't designed to. So it was crushing my well being. So I was mentally conditioned to try to do that and to be that, but it was setting me up for not to live a long life. And it was also creating a lot of stress for me. But it was like a way of being I had to have. So as soon as I had my human design reading, it totally disappeared that for me. I just saw it black and white that I am not designed to be that way, but I was designed to fall into the trap of being that way because I'm open in those areas. I'm open in the areas of competitiveness. I'm open in the area of energy for work. So
So
I
we
was
can
always
so
being
Lucas, so you can learn to operate in that way. Is that what you're saying? That it's not a natural way for you to operate, but you learn to operate in that way?
right. I was conditioned. I was highly
Conditioned.
susceptible. All of us, this is the main thing, is that each of us as human beings are highly susceptible to becoming fixated on and deciding that we need to be ways that are not natural for us to be. And human design shows it in black and white. It's so clear. This is who you are. This is who you're not. So it's not to say that every human being is living the way I was, such an extreme version of what we call the not self in human design, but most people are. Most people are completely slaves to the conditioning. And people can get at this from other modalities, other tools and methods, and can kind of make this distinction. But human
Mhm.
design makes it so simple and so visually clear that people just see, oh, okay, I'm not that way. So now I can stop when that thought comes up that I need to be the hardest working person. I can remember my human design because the visual will never leave your brain once you see it, and it just helps people
Okay.
relax.
All right, Lucas. So I have to challenge you on something. So you were
Yeah.
this really hard person and successful in doing all these things, and then your human design taught you that that wasn't a natural way of being. So that then did you go from being this really hardworking person into a bum, or how did you balance the
So
knowing? How did you balance
it's
the
a
knowing?
process. Most people don't
Yeah.
go. It's not like a switch that you can just hit. Some people it is, but for
Yeah.
me, well, one, my body was telling me. So I was a health coach. I was a very quote unquote successful health coach. I created a six-figure business in between 2005 and 2015,
Mhm.
and things were good, but I was burned out, even though I was doing all kinds of healthy things. And so I always had this thought in my brain, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? What do I need to do differently? So it's always looking for but because I was in circles with successful entrepreneurs who have designs more like yours, Gail, where like you are a high powered individual. You have three of the motor centers, right? So you're designed to be willful and to work hard.
Hmm.
And so I was homogenized and conditioned as a non-energy type in human design. I just saw and I learned from people, my mentors. If you want to have a successful business, if you want to make an impact in the world, this is how you do it. You know, you're a high energy being. You have all your you get your exercise in. You know, you work hard. And I was applying all these best practices, yet my body couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just quote unquote bad genetics. I'm literally of a type in human design that is a non energy type. I'm not here to work, I'm here to guide and advise.
Hmm.
So that's like, whoa, my whole life I've been outworking everyone, and I'm literally not here to work. But coming back to your question, it took me some time. One, because the mind doesn't want to let go of control, and the mind gets
Right.
scared oftentimes to let go of the ways of being and operating that led to success.
Mhm.
It also came into my life right when we had our first child, who had significant health issues and special needs. And so it turned on inside of me of like, dude, you got to make it happen. You got to pay the bills. You got to provide for this family. And so for some years, it was while I was continuing to verify the human design system as accurate and trustworthy, it took me some time to really, and I basically had to keep hitting it's like you know, someone who tries something that doesn't work, right? Or like, I had to keep hitting my head against the wall to
Yeah.
realize operating not as my design doesn't work. I can get short term results, but my health issues started to get worse and worse. So I'd have these health crashes. Um, and so I just kept getting more and more evidence to the point where I had enough evidence that I could let go. So I came to it stubbornly, and
So
over
it's
time.
really shifting, if I'm understanding correctly, it's shifting your energy source, really. I mean, drawing your energy kind of from a different place and operating at a different
Yeah.
level of that.
Understanding,
And
that's
that
one of the main distinctions, is understanding how much energy do you have as a being, and then how are you designed to use energy. So
and
we
where are
all
you
have
pulling it
energy.
from also? Is it also where you're pulling it from?
Yeah, where it comes from in your design. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of the so-called energy I need to provide for my family has to come from other beings. You know, I'm not designed to be this kind of font and source of energy to build and create life. I'm
So
designed, yeah.
well, so I was gonna ask you, Lucas, because I was really digging into I was Googling the heck out of human design just to get different pieces. And in one place that I read, it described it as somebody said, like, if you put your hands out and it double that, the aura, right? The
Mhm.
energy level. So we're drawing and feeding each other energy. So is that what you're describing in that you're pulling energy?
Yes. So there's many distinctions in human design. One of the main distinctions is what type are you?
Hmm.
So there are four main types: the generator, which are the builders; the manifestors, which are the initiators; the projectors, like myself, who are the guides and advisors; and then reflectors, who are the evaluators, the ones who can really give us an objective reflection of how everything's going in a
Hmm.
location, in a group, or in a relationship, or in the world. Um, so each of those four types has a distinct aura, auric um, kind of design. So for you as a generator, the builders, your aura is magnetic, it's warm, and it's enveloping. So and it is it's out beyond us. And then amongst all generators, there's no generator ever that's ever had your exact design, you know, with your exact genetic makeup, with your exact karma, all of that, right? So you're unique, you're one of a kind, I'm one of a kind. But all generators do share a common auric quality that is very important to understand, because then for this is 70% of the world are generators. And the bottom line for a generator, the builders with these warm, enveloping auras is that are magnetic, is to let life come to you. You know, especially in the coaching world where there's the coaching tends to overlap with entrepreneurism,
Mhm.
because most people, if they want to have coaching clients, you got to go find them or attract them in. Most of the coaching is this 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 kind of mantra of like, go make it happen. Go find your clients. Have your vision for your business, create your plan, and go work your plan. Basically, impose your will and your vision on the world. Go manifest
Mhm.
it, make it happen. And for generators, you're designed to let it happen. Essentially, you can still have intentions, visions, desires, but hold all that lightly, because you're always pulling in. You're always pulling people towards you. And so it's about so anyway, and that's your aura. That's your aura
Mhm.
doing that. Where I have a very different aura. And if I were to be taught by generator coaches, like, here's how you build your business, you like law of attraction, like or
Mhm.
the strategies that work for generators, and especially the amount of work that generators can take on in a healthy way. If I take that on as a projector with a very different aura and very different energy type, it will burn me out. What happens is, when any of us is living outside of our design, not only do we suffer, we tend to be frustrated, we tend to be bitter.
Yeah.
Things don't work as well, things aren't coming as well, and then we're all in our heads trying to figure it out. We're coming up with the next strategy. We're all in our heads, and we're not tuned into life. What happens is we end up putting out a distorted frequency. Our unique
Mm.
energetic ends up getting transmitted out to the world in a distorted way. It's funky, and we don't attract the right people for us. Or we might attract them, but they don't get that clean energy of, oh, this is Gail, and Gail's for me, and I'm being pulled in.
Yeah.
um, so does that answer your question about auras?
It does. It's I think it's just fascinating. I love all of this. And you use this also for couples and partners in business, or couples.
Mhm.
And I know because I was in Rochelle, your wife, Lucas, is my coach, as you know, and she's one of my coaches. And she was talking a little bit about the human design when she introduced me to you. And she showed me a chart. And basically, you connect with people in different ways or don't. And what we determined in a joking way, but also according to the chart, is that we complete each other. It was kind of like, you complete me based on this chart. So,
Mhm.
can you talk about that when you have a partner where maybe there's more discord, and how human design might be able to help you understand why that is and how you can work from that point?
Yeah. So we start with the maps, the body graphs of each individual. So
Mhm.
when you look at any individual's human design, you're basically seeing a map of who you are, right? And then what's amazing about this technology is you can map two people on top of each other. You can take two body graphs, put them on top of each other, and see so much about the relationship. It's all right there. So you can see what brings the two people together, where
Mhm.
you're electromagnetic, and opposites attract, right? That's our genes. Our genes are looking for something other than us to plug into, basically to make more human beings.
Okay.
So it shows us what brings us together, which, by the way, also is where the hate is, love and hate. So we get pulled together, and it's attraction and repulsion, attraction and repulsion. But that's where the sparks fly. And then
Right.
there's places where what we call compromise, where that's where the annoyance, the friction is, where it just feels, yeah, that's almost always the place where relationships end, because there's this unresolvable compromise where one person doesn't feel good, or at least their mind doesn't feel good in that thematic, whatever that area of the body graph is, whatever it turns out to be. So Rochelle, my wife, and she won't mind me sharing this, but she's compromised by me in the channel of the the original bonding that leads to marriage. So in our marriage, I'm the one who makes the rules, the principles for our marriage. I mean, I don't mentally make them up. It's just my energetic, right? And so when she bumps up against that, when her body wants to make the rules and she bumps up against my set of rules, she loses. And it's nothing we can do about it, right? Now, thankfully we're always like looking at like we're compatible in the sense that we agree with a lot of the rules, but we're not going to agree on all of them. And so she bumps up against that. So if she wants to stay with me and I want to stay with her, we have to just accept our compromises. So many relationships, they're trying to continue to work on fixing or changing something that will never be changed. Right? Same thing with individuals. I mean, this is the crux of it, Gail, is that and what human design does so well is it helps us stop trying to fix and change things that are the way they are, right?
Or be
It
like
helps us.
dramatically different than what we're designed to be.
Yeah, yeah. And so much of the personal growth world is about, I came from personal growth work that basically said you can be anything you want to be.
Most
Just,
of it, I think, is out there that tells
yeah,
you that.
create
Right.
any possibility you want and just align your thoughts with it, and you can transform. And human design says no. And it shows us why not. Now, anyway, I don't want to share another thought, but yeah, so relationships, it gives you the mapping. It's clear as day. It does require, for most people who aren't going to who aren't going to take on like studying this, it does require somebody to show you around that map, but it's not rocket science, and it makes it so clear. And so the other thing is couples compare themselves to other couples. And there are some couples who are designed to have a lot of fun together, and there's other couples that are designed to be perfectly compatible and have life work, but not to be that couple that shares life and fun together necessarily, that kind of does their own thing as individuals. And
That's
so,
interesting because
yeah.
there are couples that do absolutely everything together, and then others that are fine, but they live, they have their separate friends and separate things that they love. And
Mhm.
yeah.
You can see it right away. You were talking about how Rochelle and you complete each other in a way in the human
Mhm.
design. What that means is that if you all got into a relationship together, uh, it'd be really hard to get out of it. There are certain
Mhm.
relationships that once you're in there, based on the design, it's really hard to ever leave that
Because you're
relationship.
completing each other,
Yeah,
really.
because you're so locked in. You're so locked in, and everything is there. And so it can feel like the best thing ever, and it can also feel like being totally trapped. Um,
Oh, okay, I could see that, right? Like you're just
yeah.
locked in. So
Mhm.
so Lucas, so let's say that you were of the mind that you were curious about the human design and you were going to, or you were considering starting a business with someone and they were kind of open-minded to do this kind of thing as well. Would
Mhm.
it benefit you to look at this person? Let's say you and I are talking about doing a business deal together,
Mhm.
to show our human designs to see, okay, where might we have discord and where are we going to be on target, or it doesn't really dive into it in that way?
Oh, completely. Yeah. Any meaningful relationship. I mean, I'm biased, of course, but I would never, any relationship with anything at stake, I would always know the human design, because it can help us. It helps us navigate with less resistance, right? Um, I currently work with somebody who drives me nuts. You know, I have one of my sons. I mean, well, both of my sons drive me nuts. My wife drives me nuts. I drive me nuts, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, and that's the way they are. And it just brings it just make for me it helps me accept so much more, but it also helps us create strategies. So for a relationship that's really committed to something like raising children or making a business go or something like that, once we can accept how it is and how it's not, how you are and how you're not, and how I am and how I'm not, and the nature of our
Mhm.
relationship, there are then strategies that we can employ to create workarounds. around the areas of friction and the areas of where in a business relationship where two people come together, there's still going to be areas that neither person is going to be good at or neither person is going to be effective in. And so that might look like hiring an assistant, et cetera. So yeah, I would never not know the design of someone I'm working with. The one caveat, and this is a pitfall, is remember the fundamental teaching of human design is don't make mental decisions. So you would never look at someone's chart and say, well, I'm not going to hire that person because they're this, right? Or
Hmm.
I'm not going to actually partner with Gail because in our relationship, she's this. Remember, it's about for decision making, the inner authority. So you might end up partnering with someone where you have a kind of a funky compatibility visually, but your gut is just a hell yeah.
Right.
And that's what there is to do, is to follow that hell yeah, because there's something, or that opportunity with that person for whatever length of time is the correct thing for you to say yes to.
Well, and Lucas, what I'm hearing you say right now is, so let's say that you and I were going to partner on something, and everything felt right, and so we look at our designs together, and we're able to identify just what you said a minute ago, where we might need to get an assistant, where we're both
Yeah.
kind of falling short, and where we would be stronger if we had somebody else that fulfills that area that we are lacking, for lack of a better
Mhm.
word.
Yeah.
How interesting.
I just did a reading for a younger woman who was, well, I was actually working with her over a period of time. She wanted to transition to an upgraded work experience. She wanted to get a new job.
Hmm.
And she did follow, like, she was patient, she waited, she attracted in an opportunity. Like you, she's a sacral gut response person. She said yes to it. And then her new boss was happy for us to look at their charts together. And so,
Really?
yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
super cool. So we were able to
Yeah.
see, and one of the things for her was like, okay, um, in her new role, for me, understanding what's expected of her and understanding what she knows about the relationship so far with this boss, we were already able to identify some very likely pitfalls for her in that role.
Mhm.
Um, I won't go into more detail because it's just too far removed from this conversation. But she was, we were able to shed light on, all right, here's how you can be yourself in this role. As soon as we enter into an organization, there's all these forces pulling on us that and tempting us to be someone we're not. And
Right.
some people are better grounded and staying centered in who they are, and other people are highly susceptible to getting pulled into ways of working, being, communicating, deciding things that are not true for them, that are always going to create stress. And they might work out in the short term, but they almost always fall apart, right? So it's like, how can you be yourself in a role? And part of that is hopefully her boss continues to resonate with this so that he can honor her individuality and uniqueness and not try to get her to conform to his idea of what's needed, which of course is a balance to walk because there's work to be done, someone's got to do it, etc. But hopefully we're evolving in workplaces that care to increasingly honor people's individuality, because that's what's really best for the business long term, to be honest.
Right, right, and also understanding that sometimes, also, so I can just say, for example, in my case, I like to think of myself as a gypsy, and I move around a lot, and I don't keep things. I don't accumulate things at all, and I like to have a lot of variety. And sometimes that can look as being flaky. I've been sold, "It's because you're flaky." I go, "I'm not flaky at all." I go, "I did this for a certain amount of time, and I'm moving on to something else," right? So
Mhm.
really, even because then I think, why might I appear flaky? And I'm not. That's just the way I'm wired. I don't want to stay in this job from the time I'm 20 until I retire. To me, that would be death. And some
Mhm.
people would never want my lifestyle because there's too much uncertainty, and that would make them too uncomfortable to have so much uncertainty.
Yeah,
So
and it sounds like you've made peace with your way, and we just did your design, and
I
we
love the way I am.
yeah.
It feels me. It feels like
Hmm.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? It's like we don't have to make peace. Human design makes it possible for people to get way ahead of this. Like, I don't know about your exact journey, but most people journeys my journey again. It was not to my mid 30s until I even understood really what makes me tick. Of course, I had some idea of it. Um,
Hmm.
some of my human design was very obvious to me. Oh yeah, that's me. Totally, that's me. But yeah, we can just like see it all right now and start making peace with it now, so that we can, for the rest of our years, live with much less resistance internally and externally. And let's see what happens when we honor who we are, and we're not constantly in our heads and constantly, like, some people are so confused because of the how they were raised and the experiences that they had and the conditioning that they're under.
And the way we believe it's supposed to be, it
The
should be.
susceptibility, yeah. Some people are highly
Right.
susceptible of conditioning. Hmm. Yeah.
And
So
I'm highly resistant to
yeah,
conditioning, so
Gail,
it
for
can
people
cause
listening,
confusion. Yeah.
Gail has some really nice protection in her human design. Like, even as a young girl, even under difficult circumstances, her design has some nice, very strong personal protection for her own survival, and to resist outside influence, which can make you occur as like stubborn or hard headed or self absorbed or whatever, but also, has kept you safe and kept you on your own path. And then ultimately can be incredibly inspiring and empowering to people who just let you be, right? Anyone who wants Gail to be different than she is going to be disappointed. Anyone who's
Yeah.
like, let's let Gail be who she is, could be really inspired and empowered.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. And also on the charts you have the conscious and like unconscious, right? Is that
Mhm.
how you look at that? Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, it's
Yeah, and this is one of the things that makes human design different from astrology, where most astrology is looking at it's looking at your birth time, whereas human design revealed that we have dual consciousness, that we actually have a design of our body and our unconscious that is roughly 3 months before the birth, and so we have two sets of imprinting that then interplay together. And so you mentioned the unconscious. That's the set that most uh, that astrologers are missing and don't use at all. So you get 50% of your design is missing in most astrological readings and analysis. So yeah, human design shows us imprinting of our unconscious and our body, which actually is the most important. I mentioned we make decisions from an inner authority. That inner authority is given to us by the body. It's in the body. It resides in the body. So human design is really about, and a lot of people listening to this probably resonate with this, but it's about getting out of the head and in the body. And
mhm.
yeah, so it also shows us what's under the hood, aspects of us that are not easily recognized, even with a lot of life experience. And it shows us which of those aspects are unconscious, which are conscious, and where they show up.
And something else that I found really valuable is in understanding myself. So I know that, and it showed up in that information that I need to, I'm a hermit. I need to have my alone time. I need to sleep to recharge and to reflect. Um, and I think it's easy for us. It's certainly easy for me. And I know for people around me to assume that we're going to be like they are. Either you need a lot of sleep or you don't need a lot of sleep. Or I get teased sometime, even within my family, about because I need my and want my alone time and not so much conversation at certain times of the day and my sleep. While others are very little sleep and extremely social, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and we can misunderstand each other sometimes, oftentimes, because we can be such different people from one another, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
me, this helped me think, okay, I am uniquely me, and my, friends or family members are uniquely them. And that's why, you know, one of my sisters needs no sleep at all, and she likes to start chatting at 4 o'clock in the morning and be chatting at midnight. And I'm like, whoa, you know,
Mhm.
it's my alone time, it's my quiet time. I just don't feel like chatting kind of stuff, And they're
Yeah,
both right. We're
absolutely.
both individuals. So
I grew up in a household. Every other person in the house was a hermit. So Gail's mentioning hermit. We each have two roles. So one of Gail's is hermit, the second line. Um, and these are people who are private and need a significant amount of alone time and
mhm.
privacy in their own space. And as a projector, non-hermit, who's very tribal and social, myself, I was like um, a herding dog living with animals that didn't want to be herded, didn't want me barking at them, and I wanted to interact. I wanted to tell them what to do and how to
Yeah,
live a better life. And there's all these hermits who, would retreat into their rooms. And so this would have been incredibly helpful for me to know at a very young age, just to love and accept I have a pretty extreme design, um, and in a number of ways. Uh, and yeah, part of my gift to the world is to be critical, is to share criticisms. And this, you probably don't need human design to know this, but human design makes it very clear. The way that part of design works is it needs to be invited, right? And
okay.
I'm also designed to save the day, right? So I grew up just criticizing everything and everyone for their own good, right?
Of
Trying to save
course.
the day,
Of course, yes.
but rarely invited to do so, becoming very disappointed and bitter about that, and then like trying to figure out how to get them to think the way I was thinking, and just a world of suffering that was
That's so
unnecessary.
Yeah, so you understand yourself, and then you can understand why the other people respond the way they respond.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it even helps with, we've got a world that's changing rapidly, and we probably don't have time to go way into this, but human design also reveals beyond our own design, but it reveals mechanics of the larger program of the universe, and it reflects what human design shows in the mechanics of the global imprinting. Um, it basically
Wow.
explains everything that we're experiencing. So I'll just share this one bit, but like right now it's 2022. At the beginning of 2020, Pluto entered the 60th gate in human design, which is part of the channel of mutation. So all of life has been under intense mutative pressure since that time. What have we've had a pandemic with a virus that continues to mutate. Well, this Pluto's going to be in the 60th gate on and off, but mostly on until 2024. So if anybody's thinking that the virus is going to stop mutating, or that we're not going to have more viruses, uh, human design would suggest think again. Plan for things to continue to be crazy. And it's not just viruses. Like as a species, we're under mutative pressure, right? We're evolving faster, so to speak, in ways that are positive and healthy, in ways that are not so healthy. So it really helps us understand, and also the polarization that we see in the world. Um,
Well, and you're right. I mean, look, because this could go to whole different conversation, and which is so fascinating. But you also see, like, the advances we're making in technology and space travel and all these things, and at the same time, um, I have a son with a drug addiction. I mean, the addiction crisis is increasing. The homelessness is increasing. The mental
mhm,
illness in our country without solutions is increasing, right? So you almost have like these two polar opposites where we're advancing so rapidly and so strong in one area and declining in the other. And I look at oh my god, I really don't want to go on this rabbit hole, but like the increase like school shootings or mall shootings and all these
mhm.
kinds of things. It's like what's going on? I mean, And then, of course, we have the pandemic. And of
Yeah.
course, we have the interesting politics that we've had for the last several years. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole other conversation. And I'm not exactly an expert, although I could, you know, speak, I could share a lot about it, but I'll just say that, like, yeah, that's one of the things that's captivated me is human design helps shed light on all of it. It really, we're part of a larger program. We're part of a program, essentially. You know, it's a weird thing to get our mind wrapped around, but we're a little bit more like robots than we realize.
yeah.
We're all playing our part based on our genetics, and it's all part of a larger. And you can see it all in numbers. Now, it doesn't mean everything's predetermined. Life is mutative, you know. But to
And we make
personalize,
choices, right? We make choices. So when you're following your design, you have the opportunity. This is my guess, my
yeah,
understanding. When you're following your design, you have the opportunity to actually really live your life in the best way possible. It's when you're fighting
yeah.
against it.
One of the most controversial concepts in human design is that of quote unquote no choice. So, and I'm not
Mm,
saying this is the truth, but this is what the guy who basically this was a revealed knowledge. This All of this information occurred to someone who had nothing to do with any of these areas of knowledge prior to receiving it. But one of the things he was adamant about is that there's actually no choice. But the way that works, as far as I can tell, is like you would ask me about when I got my human design, did I just go from being the hardest worker to a bum? Some
mhm.
people
And
get
that was a joke, that
no, I
was a
know,
joke.
no, but like,
Like, yeah,
or another way to say it would be like, did you go from being the hardest worker to being someone who who no
yes,
longer needed to work a lot? No, and I said it was a process for me. Whereas I know for
mhm,
sure some people would get a human design reading and that would just be it. It'd be like a switch. But there's really no choice. It occurs like my wife and I, we're making a bunch of choices right now. You know, are we going to spend money? We've got some trees we got to take care of. Are we going to travel to Baltimore to see my family, even though the COVID is exploding?
yeah,
Like all these choices, right? And it does occur like we make choices. On the deepest level, though, the choices we were going to make based on the totality of our awareness and understanding, if that makes sense. So, like I was saying, I needed to have more evidence. I needed to continue making the stupid mistake of overcommitting myself to overworking and trying to prove myself competitively and have these health crashes to finally stop doing it,
right.
right? Since I've finally stopped doing it, it occurs like I'm choosing it, you know, in that moment, but really I'm not. It's just a reflection of my awareness, you know, the totality of my awareness. So anyway, that's a controversial concept, but it like the best way to play with that, in my experience, is that again, it's about taking the pressure off of us. Why
Mhm.
are people committing suicide? You know, I was telling you about a family member of mine who's on the street, drug addicted. I saw that his drug addiction was triggered by pressure that he felt mentally to be different or better than he was. I experienced depression and a deep sadness at times. And what is that related to? That's the pressure that, for me personally, yes, there's some of that. I wish I was different. My mind wishes I was different, but also the world. I wish the world was different. I'm raising two little kids. I wish that things looked like they were getting better in the world for them. Whenever we resist what is, we suffer. And we get into
Yeah.
a loop of suffering, of this like resisting. I wish I was different, or I wish they were different, or I wish the world was different. And it can become so self destructive. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. The piece I was going to share about personalizing it is I was raised in a family of do gooders. You know, my whole family across the board. Like nobody was in business, nobody was out to make a profit. Everybody is involved with making the world a better place. You know, educators, civil servants, activists.
Mhm.
That's what I was raised in. And I was also raised in the 80s, 90s, right? things were getting seemed to be getting better in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And now we're in this time that feels like decline, right? The wealthy are getting wealthier, the middle class is evaporating. Um, we're all like, there's more war in the world. There's potential civil war. It's like, for me, that's, to my conditioned self, that's been devastating. It's so hard for me to accept that the world is not becoming a better and better place for more people, even if
Yeah.
it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Um, and that's my addictive tendencies. That's what's driven it more than anything else, is like in this sense of powerlessness, right? To have a family member who's addicted, another family member who's suicidal, to have a parent who won't take care of themselves,
Yeah.
to have a kid with special needs, like all this stuff where it's like, wow, I want so much of everything to be different, and I feel so powerless to do anything about it. And human design reveals we we, we have very little power. We have very little power, and people, um, people who are seemingly wielding a lot of power, or are wielding a lot of power, who found themselves in a higher place in a hierarchy, and they're making things happen, they're doing things, that is reflective of their design and their unique trajectory in life. It's
Mhm.
complete vanity for anyone to say, like all these people who create a lot of success and turn around and say, you can do it too if you just buy my program
Right.
and follow these steps. You can do what I did because I did it. No, what they did is a reflection of their design and their serendipity, right? And sure, they did things to expand their capacity to be their best self, right?
Sure.
To be as resourced as possible, to take advantage of their situation. But it's complete vanity for people to say that they're special, and you can be special too. They're just playing their part,
Yeah.
They're just being themselves, playing their part with their serendipity, their good fortune, their luck, more so than we could even imagine,
Yeah.
you know? So, um, yeah, all that adds up to like, let's all relax. Let's relax and enjoy the show. Be yourself. And for some people, that's going to be being part of the political polarities. For some people, that's going to be being an activist. For some people, that's going to be being on the front line and dying in the war between fascism and democracy. For some people, it's going to be being a non-attached, meditator. All of it is there, right? But don't play any of the roles unless it's correct for you.
Right. And well, what I was gonna say, Lucas, is for me, it feels like I used to wish. I don't think I wish anymore. And but what I do is like live in this place of acceptance at the moment, which is less than a second. I mean, this is what this is right now. So when I want to change something, it's like, what do I need to do to change it?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of wishing that it would change, right? Even with my son, which still, makes my heart cry all the time. It's finally being able to live with things is reaching a point of acceptance. And what can I do in this space? What can I so this was part of the reason for creating this podcast, is the I Love Me Lab. I mean, because at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, you know, this is who we have, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
loving ourselves so that we can open our heart and love, others bigger and better. I believe that's my
Mm-hmm.
belief. So,
Yeah, I love that. It starts with acceptance, right? And
mhm,
then, so
right.
what an
It
acceptance,
doesn't mean I accept it and I don't want to change it. It means, no, this is what
yeah,
it is at this very moment. Yeah.
yeah, it's stopping resistance in the sense
Hmm.
that we're not condoning it, we're not celebrating it. It's that it
Mm-mm.
is what it is, right?
Right.
It is what it is. And then looking at like, well, how do we want it to be? I
How
would
can I respond? Yeah. In this
How can I
moment, what can
respond
I
to
do
it?
moving forward? Right.
In the case of like a family member who's drowning, so to speak, right? The,
Right.
the thing that I would just point out from a human design standpoint again is like, each person's response is going to be unique, and it's only for your inner authority. So one mother it might be correct for her to intervene, to move
Mhm.
towards the child, to intervene, to be confrontational, to take a bold action, to interrupt something in one moment. Another mother, it might be her inner authority might guide her to let go and take space. And so there's no right or wrong. There's no
Right.
We can learn from each other's experience, but ultimately in the moment, we have to decide for ourselves. And bottom line, human design is its main teaching is where the rubber meets the road, these moment by moment by moment. Are you going to do what your mind tells you to do based on fear and conditioning and confusion? Or it could even be based on crystal clear logic.
Right.
Or are you going to follow what your inner authority says? And it's not like following inner authority is better. It's just that the those of us who experiment with this increasingly are reporting that following the inner authority, it doesn't always lead to better outcomes, but it feels correct, which does often lead to better outcomes in the sense that um, the body tends to be better resourced. We tend to be grounded and centered in who we are, and life can conspire with us when we're in that kind of state. We're more likely to get positive outcomes. It doesn't
Yeah, and
guarantee
even when it
anything.
yeah, and I think even when the outcome wasn't what we hoped for or we're working towards, my belief would be that you're just more accepting of whatever the outcome was because you were being true to yourself in taking whatever action or non-action you decided to do, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, when my son was in the NICU for 15 days, and I was
Mhm.
completely not self, right? I was completely gripped by fear, and I didn't sleep. I drank espresso, you know, like over and over. Just I totally wrecked myself, you know.
Yeah,
And I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the distinctions. I still might have done that because it was such a traumatic experience. But um, yeah, that's an extreme version um, of being in the mind and not trusting and not accepting
right,
versus uh, being dropped in and saying, okay, this is life. Part of life is death. Part of life is sickness. Part of life is bad luck. Okay,
right.
but let me be grounded and centered in who I am, and then see how I'm what's correct for me to do next.
I love that you just said I actually got a whole visual when you said that being dropped into your how you respond, right? So for
Mhm.
me, it's just, in fact, I got goosebumps right now, just being like just dropped into my gut and trusting that when I drop in there and stay out of here, that everything's going to be okay. However, it turns out, everything's going to be okay if I just drop into myself, whatever that is for me, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to really think on that one. So we're going to, and we went, I just appreciate so much your time. And I do have one final question for you. So this is a I Love Me Lab podcast. And so if I were to ask you to shed one piece of wisdom to the listeners, one way that they can show themselves how to love themselves even more, what would that one thing be?
So I would say, and this is not revolutionary or radical probably for most of your listeners, but it's to take time to be tuned into your body every day, to slow down as much as possible and really listen to your body. This life is only made possible by the body. We only have consciousness because of the body. It's making it all possible. And when the body suffers, our ability to our cognitive ability, our ability to be aware and awake and to be ourselves is diminished. So take care of yourself. Take care of your body. Take care of your body. Be tuned into it, and get a human design. Find out what your human design is. I mean, even if you go and do it on your own online, um, and there are people like myself who do readings, pay what you can, or donations. This knowledge is available right now. for humanity for a reason. And if you feel called to it, it can really shortcut um, and accelerate your process of awakening to who you truly are, so that it really can support that relaxing and trusting, loving yourself, knowing that you're perfect, absolutely
Just the
perfect.
way you are, right? Yeah. So Lucas Seipp-Williams, if no, Seipp,
Like,
Lucas
yeah,
Seipp, Lucas Seipp-Williams, and that's Seipp Williams. If people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
it's coachwithlucas.com, and my contact information's on the site. And again, at this time, if you feel called to do a reading with me, it's again, pay what you can. If you can get on my schedule, whatever works for you. Love doing this work and would love to connect with you all. And Gail, thanks for having me on. Thanks for putting up with my rambling,
Oh
tangential
my God, no,
style.
I could have these conversations for hours and hours and hours. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll be posting in the show notes. We'll have your contact information there. If you're unable to find it, the listeners, you can go ahead and reach to me and I'll get you in touch with Lucas right away. But this was informative. I find this stuff fascinating and interesting. And thank you so much.
Thank
And
you,
hopefully
Gail.
we'll talk again soon.
Okay, be well.
Thanks so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and want more information on our guests and resources, please visit ilovemelab.com. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share with a friend. Hey, there's more great episodes to come. So until next time.